Hello, and welcome to the third Public PharmaLedger webinar. My name is Martin Hunt, and I'm the Global Marketing Manager for Honorat Clinical, and I'm a member of the PharmaLedger Culture and Adoption team who are responsible for bringing you this series of webinars, which are aimed at communicating and disseminating PharmaLedger's activities and progress amongst its members and the general public. This webinar will focus on one of our core use cases, electronic patient information, and will involve a deep dive into its evolution and explore perspectives from both patient and healthcare professional points of view. The webinar is planned to run for about 1.5 hours and will consist of a series of presentations, an interview with some of the patients who've been involved in the development of the EPI solution, and a demonstration of the EPI app. This will be followed by a live Q&A with all of the speakers. We'll be using Slido to capture your questions during the webinar, so please scan the QR code that you see displayed on the screen and use it to join in the live polls during the presentations and to post any questions that you may have, which will all be answered at the end of the last presentation. You need only scan the QR code once to participate in the polls or to post questions. And all of our webinars are available on PharmaLedger's YouTube channel after the event. So I'd now like to hand over to Paul Marley, who's going to tell you a little bit about PharmaLedger and introduce today's topic in more detail. Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul Marley. I work in the supply chain at GSK, and I'm also GSK's representative on the EPI use case in PharmaLedger. PharmaLedger is an innovative medicines initiative. This means it is co-funded by the EU Commission and the Association of Pharmaceutical Companies Operating in Europe, known as EFPIA. PharmaLedger is comprised of 29 organisations overall. These come from a range of backgrounds that includes pharma, small to medium tech enterprises, academic institutes, and patient and healthcare organisations. We're coming together to see how the technology of blockchain can help us build digital trust across the full span of healthcare stakeholders. This includes the development and the supply of medicines, through to the ongoing use across patient populations. We want to herald in a new age of collaboration in healthcare. The 3-year project started in early 2020. We're now more than halfway through. We're really proud of what has been achieved to date, considering we've had to drive progress in the context of the global pandemic. Today, we're going to hear about how the design of a blockchain-based platform has been made into a working prototype in 2021. This has allowed us to test and validate some of the use cases we identified at the very start of the project. Let me share more about this scope. PharmaLedger is looking at use cases across 3 domains: clinical trials, supply chain, and health data. Today, we're going to take a deeper dive into the progress in the EPI use case, where EPI is electronic product information. Ken will talk us through this from the perspective of the user journey, and you'll get to see a working demonstration of the technology involved. Many of us recognise product information in the traditional format of paper leaflets within packs of medicine. These contain important regulatory information for patients and healthcare professionals alike. The limitations are well recognised. Readability can be difficult with small font sizes, language options are limited, and a lag exists between the provision of new information as the print and the physical supply takes time to flush through a supply chain. Consider too the environmental impact due to the billions of leaflets used in the industry each year. The concept of product information in an e-format is not new. We already see this in other sectors such as banking and consumer goods. With medicines, this has been less forthcoming. PharmaLedger is asking if blockchain can help realise this opportunity. Blockchain can provide a level of trusted transactions that older tech would struggle to offer. The content can be provided and used with confidence by all stakeholders. Partnered with the right product data, it also opens up much more functionality than simply showing a leaflet on a glass screen. Let's hear from Ken as he takes us into the user journey for EPI over blockchain.
Thanks, Paul, and hello, everybody. My name's Ken Thursby. I'm the co-lead of the eLeaflet use case here at PharmaLedger. The end user journey is a really important part of our future vision. We're seeking to connect health authorities, manufacturers, healthcare professionals, and patients together using the blockchain for the sharing of data and information. And for those of you that have seen our previous webinars, we talk a lot about value to the different ecosystem players from being connected and sharing this information. But out of all of these entities, which one is the most important? Well, at PharmaLedger, we think it's the end users, particularly the patients. Why do we think this? Well, it's simple. All of the other entities are there to serve the patients. Health authorities, manufacturers, and HCPs are all there to help patients manage their health condition and improve their health outcomes. So when it comes to this particular point, we really need to make sure that we're delivering value to the patients. Do you agree with us? If you're watching the webinar live, you get a chance to give us your view. Please use the Slido. The question is, who do you think is the most important ecosystem player for eLeaflet? Is it the health authorities, manufacturers, healthcare professionals, or patients? Please join in. Let us know what you think, and we'll see the results at the end of the webinar. All right, back to the end user journey. You can see the future vision graphic here. We are going to focus in on the right-hand side of the graphic, the dissemination part. And that's because this is the part where the end users are engaged. When we're talking about value, we also want to talk about value in terms of the future state versus the current state. We need to be creating incremental value for this to be useful, right? So with that in mind, I'm just going to give a quick overview of the current state today, and then we'll compare it to the future vision. In today's world, the product information starts off at the manufacturers. The manufacturers create the content. Ironically, it's electronic. Okay, it's an antiquated Microsoft Word document, but it's still electronic. And that goes through the review and approval process. Once it's approved, the manufacturer adds some more info to it. And then that is converted to another electronic format to send to the printers. The printer produces the leaflets. The leaflets are returned to the manufacturer. The manufacturer puts them into a carton with the medicinal product, and then the patient gets it. In the future, we see this process being radically different. Manufacturers would still produce the content, but that content can be produced in a format suitable for authoring, review, approval, and dissemination using modern technology. And we can pull those from the manufacturer's systems of record into the enterprise wallet. And each manufacturer would have its own enterprise wallet, and they can put thousands of e-leaflets in there, thousands of different products. And of course, we've got hundreds, if not thousands, of manufacturers as well. So the data will be stored in these enterprise wallets. Furthermore, if there's an update, that can pull through into the enterprise wallet without a delay. As soon as the updated leaflet is approved by the health authorities, that would pull from the manufacturer's systems of record and sit there in the enterprise wallet ready for a patient when they need it. So how does an end user get the e-leaflet from the enterprise wallet? Well, one way they can do it is using their handheld device, their phone, and using an app. They can scan the barcode on the pack, and the back-end technology of the blockchain resolver will find the correct manufacturer's enterprise wallet for the product you have in your hand and deliver the most up-to-date leaflet. And to demonstrate this, PharmaLedger has developed an app, but it could equally be an API to an existing app in a market. And you'll see what that app looks like a little bit later in the webinar. So the first benefit of eLeaflet is you get it quickly and you get the most up-to-date leaflet because it pulls direct from the system, from the manufacturer's system of record. The other benefit that's offered by this solution is to do with the barcode. And this humble barcode, you can see it in the bottom right there. This humble barcode has 4 key bits of information in there: the global trade identification number, the serial number, the batch number, and the expiration date. And those bits of information can be used to deliver other important bits of data and information across the ecosystem. And this is what we call building for the future. It's kind of like a bundle of value on top of the basic EPI. And what you can see here is a list of different digital services that we could give today. It's not all inclusive. There's lots of other ideas that came from the patient advisory group and from the healthcare professional focus groups. This is just to demonstrate some of the ideas. So let's do a little dive into what we mean by that. So EPI is the e-leaflet plus the most up-to-date version, right? Then you could do other things. Using the data in the barcode, you could do an anti-counterfeit check to verify that the package is legitimate from the manufacturer. And that could help improve trust in the health system. Now, in Europe, we've got the Falsified Medicines Directive. Maybe that's not interesting for Europe. But for developing nations that don't have this capability right now, this could be very interesting for public health. Another example is patient safety, batch recall. If a manufacturer has a batch recall, they could post to the enterprise wallet to say that this particular batch number for this particular product number is subject to a recall. And when the patient or the healthcare practitioner scans the code, they'll get a message to tell them that the product is recalled. So that can help improve safety. Continuing with the safety theme, it's also possible to use the barcode and the app for adverse event reporting. When a healthcare product is released to the market, the authorities continue to monitor its efficacy and safety throughout the product's life. And if a patient experiences an adverse event with the product, they're encouraged to report that back to the authorities, which can help with decisions, with policy, and improving the information on the leaflet if that's necessary. With the humble barcode and the pack, what we could do is we could use that to capture the precise, accurate information about the product. So its exact product name, its product number, the exact batch, the serial number, and the expiration date. And that data could be used by the authorities to quickly understand what's going on with that product in the market, if there's any trends. So overall, again, that could help the overall safety of products in the market. So that's some of the notions of value we've got. And I say notions because these are ideas that we were thinking about at PharmaLedger, but we really didn't know for sure whether these kind of things would be valued by the end users. And that's what we wanted to understand. So we recognize that, the paper leaflet shown here in the graphic, that has its shortfalls that can be overcome with a digital version. But in this digital world, we've got an opportunity to reimagine the way that EPI is delivered to improve health outcomes. We've got notions of value, but we want to really understand what good looks like from an end user perspective. And that starts with understanding what's important to patients and healthcare professionals. We also need to recognize at PharmaLedger, right, blockchain technology is useful for some things, but it's not a silver bullet to solve every problem with product information. However, we want to make a difference, right? So we need to identify where we can create value. We want to get input from the end users. And because we're focused on action, we want to build mock-ups and get some feedback on those mock-ups to develop a useful product. We don't want to be busy fools. We want to do something which is valuable. So how do we do it? Well, we formed a couple of different end user groups. we formed a healthcare practitioner group. And we did this in Singapore. We chose Singapore because it's an early adopter market open to EPI. The health authority allows electronic product information in Singapore, and the authorities are also open to different technology opportunities. So this makes it a great place to test our notions of value. In addition, the population is digitally savvy. Even before the pandemic, Singaporeans were scanning barcodes to get information. Arguably, we're all a little bit better in doing that since the pandemic, because scanning codes is now more commonplace than it was. The second group that we set up was a patient advisory group, and we did this with our partners in PharmaLedger, the European Patients Forum and the European Forum for Good Clinical Practice. We ran a series of discovery workshops over 5 weeks, and this was all about really understanding the patient journey. We set a scenario where a patient had just been diagnosed with a condition with the physician, and we went through the process of the patient taking the prescription, getting it filled at the pharmacy, interacting with the product and the product leaflet through the course of taking the medicine. And that was really active listening for our development team to understand the trials and tribulations that a patient goes through with their medicine. Day 2 was all about ideation. This was taking the ideas and features that the patients had around how we could transform from paper to electronic leaflet. We looked at those top ideas. We generated quite a few. We picked the top ideas, and in day 3, we started to turn those into prototypes called wireframes. And this is like a mock-up of what you would see on your mobile phone if you were using the app. And it's great for getting critique. And we got some really good positive feedback, but we also got some constructive feedback, things where we didn't quite hit the mark. And that's fine. We want to find these things out because it gives us an opportunity in a safe test environment to enhance the prototype, which is what we did in day 4. And all of these ideas and features have made it through into the next version of the app. And that really was useful to help us understand whether the notions of value we had were good. And it also allowed us to discover other things that our team hadn't thought about. Okay, that's a summary. We've got a couple of team members with us that are going to do a deep dive into each of these end user groups. First up, I'm going to hand over to TY, who's going to take us through the healthcare practitioner focus group.
Thank you, Ken. Hello, everyone. I'm Tan Yong from MSD. I co-led the rollout of the EPI use case proof of concept in Singapore. As shared by Ken, Singapore is an attractive early adopter market because of the openness of the authorities to digital innovations, as well as a digitally savvy population. So while the conditions may be right, we know that to drive change adoption, an awareness of value needs to be created, and these values need to be experienced by the new users. One major group of users is our healthcare professionals, or the HCPs. For the next few minutes, I would like to share our experience on how the Singapore Pharma team executed this proof of concept. I will also provide highlights of the HCP's feedback. The virtual meeting took place in August this year and was conceptualized to offer HCPs a hands-on experience. Through a process of playing with the app, we wanted to understand HCP's perception of the present features and values, their views of what new features could add to improve their practices, and also to identify potential change advocates among them. Users' feedback was collected real-time through an online survey as well as through the Zoom chat. The survey questions were designed to elicit responses to help the PharmaLedger team uncover new insights so as to further improve the app. The Singapore affiliates of Bayer, BI, GSK, MSD and Novartis participated in this initiative. To prepare for the virtual meeting with the HCPs, we gathered our own local cross-functional teams and met almost weekly over 5 months to brainstorm, align, map out the stakeholders, as well as to sequence the events leading up to the virtual meeting. The team decided to write on the Pharma Industry Group, the Singapore Association of Pharmaceutical Industry or SAPI, for their network and neutrality. Another reason for choosing to partner SAPI is because SAPI has an active e-labeling work group whose work is complementary. As there is no existing framework for cross-pharma collaborations that involve HCPs on a technology-focused initiative, the team had to innovate, create, and recalibrate several times to align on the implementation steps to ensure that documentation and compliance requirements are fulfilled. Running in parallel, each of the 5 companies worked with our packaging sites to procure product carton boxes with a barcode and access instructions. This is an important step as the barcode is the data carrier that links the physical product to the electronic product information. The team also generated product information in XML format and loaded them into the enterprise wallet. The enterprise wallet is where HCPs would access the product information when they scan the barcode. On the actual day, 16 doctors in private practice joined the meeting. We also had observers from the Singapore Health Sciences Authority, or the HSA, and the National Pharmacy Program Management Office, or NPPMO. Each participant had physical dummy packs that were delivered to them ahead of the meeting. HCPs were given time to follow the instructions provided on the carton boxes to access the product information electronically. Simple reminders were also shared over our Zoom call. The hands-on session went smoothly with active exchanges over the chat function. So what do the HCPs think? Let's go to Slido to take a vote on what you think the HCPs desire. Feedback from the HCPs showed that a high 94% found the instructions easy to follow. 75% indicated that the app met their expectations, and close to 90% have no concerns with using their personal devices to access product information. Also very gratifying is that almost 2/3 felt that they would use the app in their medical practice and that they would also recommend the app to other healthcare professionals. Considering that the app is still evolving, we understand that enhancements will be necessary. Areas for improvement pointed out by the HCPs include app loading speed, improved instructions on how to scan the barcode, code readability, and user interface. We then went deeper and tried to understand what features of the EPI would be of value to the HCPs. What we found is that search capability within the product information, font size adjustment, and language selection are the top 3 most desired features. Other useful features include pop-up alerts when there is an update, name of the product in other countries, version date of the product information, infographics to improve understanding, search function by product name, and product images. While most of these features are technically feasible, the team recognizes that approval from the local regulator may also be needed. Moving beyond product information delivery, the team also surveyed the HCPs on other functionalities that could be of use to their medical practice. The top 3 functions are safety alerts from the manufacturers, adverse drug reaction reporting to the regulator, and expiry date checks. Other suggestions include a personalized page for patients to keep track of their medicines, place of purchase, medication reminder, product comparison, and price information. Like most surveys, we also had a catch-all comments section from which we gathered the following valuable feedback. Affirmation that the paperless concept is good, practical questions around accessing the information without data carrier code, creation of a single platform to deliver product information for all regulated products, and recommendation to simplify the access instructions. The team is particularly heartened to see the feedback on how clinics and pharmacies could help patients transition to the app by guiding them with first-time app download. The positive outcome of this meeting is indicative that HCPs perceive value in using the app in their medical practice. Nevertheless, further enhancements are needed. I hope this sharing has been beneficial, especially to colleagues who may be thinking of running similar focus group discussions in your countries. I will now pass the time to Hannes to share feedback from the other important user group, the patients. Thank you.
Thank you, TY. So now that we know about the opinions from healthcare practitioners, we also want to know, what do patients think about electronic product information? Hello, my name is Hannes Jarke. I'm a project coordinator at the European Patients Forum. And for this project, we integrated the opinions and the feedback from 8 individual patients across the development process of the EPI app. So we had 8 people from different countries affected by different diseases and across different age groups who gave their feedback on the development of the app. So we wanted to make sure to take patient feedback into account at a point where change is still possible. Over the course of 5 weeks, we had 4 workshops, where the first one was concerned with the discovery. So how do patients actually interact with the already available paper leaflets? The second day was an ideation, where together with patients, we developed ideas and key features for an e-leaflet. On the third day, we looked at a prototype of ideas and features. So patients had the opportunity to give feedback on the first draft, so to speak, of the app. And on the 4th day, we had the prototype validation, where we looked, did this app actually meet the expectations and the ideas that patients shared in the previous days? But let's not hear me too much. Let's hear directly from the patients. Let's talk to the patient advisors who have been part of PharmaLedger and the workshop series on electronic product information. I'm really glad to introduce you to Silvia Scalabrini, Marta Morato, and Robert Joyce. And we will ask them how it was during all of those 4 workshops over 5 weeks. And my first question would be to Silvia, and I would like to know, of these workshops, which were the most important aspects for you and the other patients who has participated? What were the key takeaways? What should be included in such an EPI app?
Thanks, Hannes. So if I look back at the workshops that we had with the other members of the user advisory groups, as well as with the professionals involved, there are actually quite a few learning points that I'd like to share with you all. So the user advisory group included people from a wide range of age, conditions, countries, and also backgrounds and cultural differences. However, we realized pretty quickly that we all interacted with the leaflet in various ways. So ranging from, for example, deep engagement to actually expressing trust in the healthcare professional as a way to feel sufficiently reassured in taking the medicine. So that was also very interesting starting point for all of us. But despite this diversity, despite these differences in thinking, we realized that we had some common grounds, and we all wanted really just to pitch the emphasis on the importance of accessibility. So accessibility is a key aspect of all the information included in the leaflet. Whether that is paper-based or also all the electronic product information. So accessibility really have a leaflet that is easy to consume, that has user-friendly information, that's easy to understand. That was really considered for all of us as the key aspect. So that was really the common thing upon which we built then the rest of the workshops. One of the other features that we felt was also important to have was related to the latest and up-to-date information about the medicine. And that should definitely also be included as a reliable source of information for all the people accessing it. We also felt the need to actually have some information about the side effects of the medicine, as well as the interactions with other medications. So really just to make sure that people could have clear information about how to take the drug safely. So safely was really a key aspect of the information provided. And we also felt that although we had different opinions at the beginning, but that's the power of diversity really. And at the end, we managed to reconcile our views, and we all felt the need to have a search function in the app. So for specific terms, or just maybe for in order to retrieve information quite easily. And lastly, we also felt the need to have a way to report and document side effects in relation to the medicine concerned. So despite the rich conversation and the rich discussions that we had throughout the workshops, we also realized that, however, the electronic product information should not completely replace the paper leaflet, so that at the beginning we could actually start with having both of them together. And because it would also be an important step really to get people to get used to it, but also in terms of making sure that the different contexts and societies really could make adjustments digitally, and that people really could be put in a position to feel empowered to access the leaflet and the information in a safe way, in a way that made them feel comfortable about using the medicine. So this, in a nutshell, really were the key features that we felt that the electronic product information app should include. Of course, we were also explained very clearly in a very, very transparent way that there are also some legal requirements and principles that companies have to comply with, and therefore these leaflets must comply with principles, and they have to also make sure that they reflect what the law is saying. So there is not always room for flexibility in the type of information included, but also in the way it is actually phrased. So as I say, we were made aware of it, we were clearly explained the process, and I think that as a last point, I would really like to stress the importance of this, because this was a really good way for all of us to actually establish trust with the professionals, with the people involved in the workshop. And as a last very important learning point and takeaway, I just like to emphasize the importance of keeping honest communication flowing among all the stakeholders involved. That really helps to manage expectations from both sides, but also really to cement some really strong trust in each other that then allow some long-lasting collaboration. And I do feel that we did achieve that throughout the workshops.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. So you already touched upon a few very, very important points, which are relating to trust and which are relating to how to involve patients in a very good way and in a beneficial way. So I was wondering, and I would like to ask Marta about this topic. Would you say that patients were included in a good way, and or as you've expected? And was there something special about the series of workshops that set it apart from others?
Hi, Hans. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I think that it's not very usual that patients were included in some very important projects, especially the beginning steps, because patients will have the really knowledge and our really day-to-day and our needed, our real needs that we have to have the support, the real support, in order to make sure that our quality of life is the best as possible. So it's very important to be included in this kind of projects. And thanks for Pharma because we have been included. And it was a really extraordinary opportunity to show them how is our daily day, what are our needs, what are our expectations about the health authorities or the healthcare systems, or all the information that we need. And it's very important to make sure that our quality of life is as better as possible. And I would like to point out the really, really fantastic way that the workshops were run in order to ensure that all the patients and all the members, we had the chance to express our needs and opinions, and especially the respect, the empathy, the really very good environment, and but the most important is the team feeling, and that we were working all together for the same objective, which includes the patients. I think that the best word is to say that the collaboration. I think this was the best word to define this kind of workshops, because we have the common purpose, and the collaboration. It was the main aim for all the members. Related to the APP tool, as a patients altogether, we have the chance and the opportunity to express our concerns, our features related to the tools that we have right now, in order to compare with a potential tool that we will have in the future. And especially, as Silvia said, and Silvia explained really well, that which are the main topics that the patients would like to have really clear, in order to make sure that the information is updated and is available. And also, I think that as a group, I think that the leaders of this project have really listened at us in order to take into account our opinion, and in the fact they show us a preliminary AVP project, in which include all our comments, and not at all. It means that they will assure that in the future they will show us a new prototype, in order to make sure that all of our concerns have been included. So it's really important as a patient, in order to be sure that our comments are really taken into account. That not always happens. It's very important. In another side, as Silvia said, that sometimes we made a lot of proposals, but the legal requirements didn't allow to go ahead with our proposals or our need. But our main is to work together, and especially to collaborate in a friendly way, in order to how to achieve some changes, to be sure that the patients really have that we all need, in order to make sure that this AVP is really adapted to patients' needs.
Thank you so much, Marta. Okay, and then lastly, what I would like to know is, during this session of webinars, this session of workshops that we've conducted with all of you, and we've heard already the main takeaways, and we've heard the positive things about it. But Robert, I was wondering, are there any things in the workshop series that you thought were maybe missing, or anything that could have been improved, anything that could have added even more from a patient's perspective to the series of workshops?
It's very interesting, because I've been involved with several different projects over the last couple of years, particularly over the pandemic, that have involved patients being involved in co-production. And in this particular project, PharmaLedger, we entered into the project kind of like the midway point of the project. And I think this was a pity, because as patients, as public involved in this, if we were involved from the very beginning, as the project started, I think there are a lot of things that we could have done to help contribute to how the project has been developed. There are a number of things that we could do in this early engagement process. We could be streamlining exactly what is required by the patients for PharmaLedger. And by doing that, we would have helped to shape how the project would develop from a very early stage. My experience of PPI has changed projects that I've been involved with when I got involved at the very start. For example, there was an app that we were developing, and the contribution that I made helped the developers develop the app so that it was user-friendly from the very beginning. And the developers found it much easier to write the software and to create the code that was necessary because they knew what the patient needed, and it helped to streamline the process. And I think PharmaLedger missed out on an opportunity to do this in this particular project. However, it's not all bad. PharmaLedger actually reacted when we became involved with this project. And I think once the team felt the passion and the desire that patients have to make this project a reality and make it suitable for patients, the dynamic changed. They realized that we actually could be valuable contributors to the project, making it more successful. And I have to admire the team, because once they saw the way that we were wanting to be engaged, they decided to change. They adapted the PharmaLedger project to get us more involved. Look at this. We're actually helping to share our experience. And we've been involved with other other dissemination projects or webinars to share our experience of the PharmaLedger project. And I think that has come about because the team, the whole PharmaLedger consortium, realized that patients are an asset. We can actually contribute to the project and actually make it more suitable. And it's easier for the general public to understand a project like this when it's people who need it as patients describing what it does. And I think that's really how using patients all the time throughout the project, from the very beginning to the very end, we can help to shape the project. But also my hope is that us being involved continuously will help with the acceptance of the project and make it more valuable. One of the things that I have found is that when patients realize that patients are involved, they trust the project more. And that's because one of their own family, one of their own community is involved in the project. And I have to admire PharmaLedger for adapting what they did, bringing us in and allowing us to share our experience of the project and shape it for the future. Absolutely fantastic. They missed the opportunity at the beginning, but they more than made up for it.
Thank you so much, Robert, for all of these very nice and very, very important points that you made. And thank all of you for being here today. Thank you for all of your contributions. For all the participants here today, you will have the chance to ask questions later on at the end of the seminar, during our Q&A, during our live Q&A, and there will also be questions taken from the polls. Until then, the next step that we have is something that you've probably all been waiting for. You've heard a lot about the input that has been given to the EPI app. So now let's have a look at how it looks like. And for a prototype, Sonia, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sonja Steiner, working for Novartis in the PharmaLedger EPI and anti-counterfeiting use case. In the next 15 minutes, I do a demo on EPI functionality we have built this year, and I will provide an outlook what we want to achieve with our app in the next coming months. We started the app journey last year. End of last year, we have deployed our first version of our EPI app. In the first half of this year, we focused mainly on new functionality to display the patient information and data integration to write the relevant data on the blockchain and to our enterprise wallet. Since the second half of this year, we focused on usability. For this, we have engaged with our partners in PharmaLedger to redesign the app to put usability for the patient in focus. Let's start the demo. And please keep in mind, I'm showing made-up data for this demo. None of the data shown is a real example. The demo is using a progressive web app, but we are also working on an iOS and Android version. To demonstrate existing functionality, I'm using the second version of the app. Later, I'm switching to the hot-off-the-press new version of our app to provide an impression how the new UI looks like. This is the current home screen. This app was created with the goal testing and presenting the different scenarios. This version was never intended to hand over to patients or healthcare professionals. That's why the scanning button is still so small. Please see the barcode icon, bottom left. Now I press the button scanning and the app requests access to my camera. I accept. In our first scenario, we scan barcodes from different brands and pharmaceutical companies to show the app is product and company independent. This is essential for patients and healthcare professionals because nobody likes to switch an app just because taking different medicine. In the first example, we show a product from GSK with prescribing information of the medicine. In the second example, a product from MSD. And in the third example, a product from Novartis. We have added leaflet information in multiple languages. This to fulfill the requirements in multilingual markets. Let's start with the first example. The first barcode contains a product ID, a badge, a serial number, and an expiry date. When scanning the barcode, the content of the barcode is checked with the data uploaded in the EPI Enterprise Wallet. First, the product description and the brand owner is retrieved from the unique product ID. This is on the top of the screen. If all data match, we get the status verified. First icon shows the serial number verification status, if a serial number was part of the barcode. And the second icon shows the product status, which is currently checking only the expiry date. Details of the product can be seen when expanding the top part of the screen. Additionally, we see the icon for the prescribing information with a lot of details. We call this our EPI data. Here the patient or healthcare professional can do a deep dive into all aspects of the product information. Let's go to the next example to see another product of another company. You see, this time for the MSD product, see the product information on top of the screen. The same icon for the prescribing information. Additionally, we have now two icons showing. Report, this is for adverse event reporting, and Add to the cabinet. Both functionalities are not yet implemented, but on our roadmap. For the third example, we uploaded the EPI data in 2 languages. Let's quickly look at the EPI data. Details can be seen when clicking on the different sections. Besides the text, we show tables or even pictures. And you see in the leaflet the possibility to switch language. See top right of the screen. This version of the app was all about testing functionality. Especially the design, how the patient information is presented, will change in the new version of the app. And the 2 icons showing the verification result were merged into one status icon. Let's go to the new version of the app, developed with the support of our partners in PharmaLedger. Please keep in mind that on this app, not everything is as we wish. The app just came hot from the press. What changed besides the very comfortable scan button? The starting screen shows a welcome page with the 3 steps we need to do. Step 1, locate the barcode. Step 2, scan the barcode on the medicine pack. Step 3, track your medicine info. We follow the instruction, this time for a Bayer product. The product information, which was spread over the entire screen, is now shown in a condensed and easy-to-use way. Icons to immediately jump into the most important sections are shown on the screen, such as info before taking the medicine, how to take the medicine, side effects, how to store, and more. Based on the patient group feedback, these are the most important sections on the leaflet. Let's go to how to take. We end up in the section for indication and usage. As soon as we jumped in one of the main sections, the electronic product information gets bigger space on the screen. The icons are now shown in a row to continue easy navigation. Please see on top of the screen. If I like to come back to the initial display, I just need to press the button back to top. Having information electronically allows pharmaceutical companies updating the EPI information instantly in case a correction is needed. And this improves patient safety. Now we continue to demonstrate how we improve the safety for our patients. What happens if a patient scans a medicine pack of a batch subject to a recall? For this demo, we changed this batch to status recalled. The user gets a pop-up with the message, "This batch is subject to a recall," and the status changed to batch recalled. You can see this on top of the screen. Still, we need to define what exact instruction we can give to our patients. But just imagine this feature using paper. Let's continue with our feature to protect our patients. To protect patients from using counterfeit product, we verify the serial number, if available in the barcode. Not all barcodes on medicine packs contain a unique serial number. But if the serial number is available, we check this number against our enterprise wallet and return back the information if that medicine pack is known to us or not. Now, what happens if a patient or healthcare professional scans a barcode on a medicine pack with a serial number which is not known to us? For this, we generated an example with an unknown serial number, and the status changed to failed. And the last example, a patient or healthcare professional scans a product which is expired. You see the information that the product is expired. The patient does not need to look for an expiry date on the pack, just a quick scan and the information is displayed. By clicking on the status icon next to the product name, you can see the scanned data with the expiry date end of October this year. Going back, we see our scanning history. With this scan history, I see all my medicine information on one screen, including the status. To add another product, I just need to continue my scanning. We hope you got a good first impression how the new app looks like, and you see the value we provide to patients and healthcare professionals. And this was only a part of the functionality and the new design we have implemented this year. Before ending the demo, I'd like to quickly explain how this technically works. By scanning the barcode, the product ID or product ID badge is translated into a key SSI. The key SSI is generated to find the anchor ID on the blockchain. This enables receiving back the hash link to the data source where API information is stored. This requires pharmaceutical companies to make the data available from their system of records, material data, batch data, and especially the electronic product information. Next year, we plan a dedicated technical webinar. This will be a deep dive of all technical aspects of the EPI solution, whereof the app is just one of the components. Focus for our next month's journey is: we continue our usability improvements, we enhance our data integration capabilities for pharmaceutical companies to optimize upload of product information, and we work on integration of additional PharmaLedger use cases, such as the anti-counterfeiting use case. My colleague Patrick is now talking about these next steps in more detail.
Many thanks, Sonia, for the demo and to the previous presenters and contributors. Hi all, my name is Patrick Mara and I work within the global engineering team for Novartis. And in addition to my normal day job, I'm also the PharmaLedger EPI use case co-lead, along with Ken Thursby from MSD, who presented earlier. Over the next few minutes, and I will try to keep it as short and to the point as possible, I would like to go over the EPI product pipeline and the market adoption approach with you. However, beforehand, I would like to clarify some terms that you may have heard mentioned by some of the previous presenters, specifically the enterprise wallet. So what exactly do we mean when we say the enterprise wallet? Essentially, this is the source of the trusted information that is presented on the mobile app. This is the regulatory approved information in the case of EPI that the manufacturer makes available. This information does not come from some unknown or untrusted website, it comes straight from the manufacturer. From the pharmaceutical company's perspective, we need to load this data from our approved and validated systems of record into the enterprise wallet in order for it to be made available. It is also probably worth mentioning at this point that the EPI or the serial numbers, etc., are not actually loaded on the blockchain. What is loaded on the blockchain is a pointer to the location within the controlled and trusted environment where the data is stored. This is what Sonia was referring to when she was talking about the hash or the anchor. I can't remember which of the terms she actually used, but I believe it was one of the two of those. Now, I hope this rather high-level clarification helped, and I do apologise to the technical experts out there for my rather untechnical clarification. Before I continue to present what I was actually asked to present, I would like to mention two more things that are quite important. The first one are the different types of barcodes that we're looking at. In the presentations and in the demo, you'd have seen the use of the GS1 data matrix code. The reason for this is rather straightforward because this is essentially the de facto standard used for serialization across the globe. However, as we all know, it is not the only barcode in the marketplace. Therefore, from a PharmaLedger perspective, and from an adoption perspective, we are looking at using different barcode types. For example, we have the composite code that's used in Japan. We also have the data matrix code that is used for Russia serialization. And this differs slightly from what we have for the EU and for the US, for example. And then we have the 1D code that is used for China serialization. We also have the codes that are used on many OTC products. So essentially, this covers the different types of barcodes that we, PharmaLedger, are looking at utilizing. The last point is the app, and I think this is really quite important for people to understand. While you've seen the PharmaLedger EPI app that has been developed, Sonia presented this just previously, it is not the intention this will be the only app. We're not interested in creating the one app to rule all apps. Where a country or market have an existing app, then we will be looking to integrate this. This aids with market adoption. So now let me get back to what I'm actually here to present, and apologies for the slight diversion. Before I start, I would like to ask the following question, which you can see on Slido. We presented today our vision for a trusted, sustainable healthcare platform. So the question to all of you is, would EPI plus the additional features create more value to society? So let's start by looking at the product pipeline. Unfortunately, during this session, I can't give any timelines for these features, as this needs to be agreed and prioritized with the various stakeholders. Additionally, the development activities may, in some instances, depend on the selected pilot markets or markets. I won't go through all of these topics in detail, and we can be sure that additional features and functionality will most certainly be added as we engage with different stakeholders and get feedback from the various proof of concepts and pilots that we will be running. It is, however, worth highlighting a couple of the new features. As the saying goes, a video is worth 1,000 pictures. And with that in mind, we are looking to develop the ability to show videos that would aid in the usage or disposal of the product as examples. This actually raised an interesting question as to how the video content would be approved by the regulatory authorities, or if indeed it needs to be approved at all. Now, as Sonia mentioned during the demo, we're looking at developing the ability to perform adverse event reporting and also the add to cabinet functionality. The thought behind the adverse event reporting is twofold. First of all, to make this process much easier for the end user or the person wishing to report the adverse event. Second of all, as we have scanned the barcode on the pack, then we can provide much more details automatically, such as the batch number, the expiration date, the product code, or even the serial number. Of course, this depends on the barcode that's actually used on the pack. Now, the thought process behind the add to cabinet functionality was to provide a location where the patient could store all the information related to the medicines that they are taking. Now, all of these features require additional investigation, so if anyone is interested in contributing, then please reach out to PharmaLedger. As you can see, there are quite a number of ideas in the pipeline. We can roughly break these down into three main categories. The first category would be features or functions that users of the app would see or experience. The second category would be functionality or business processes that the pharma companies would need to consider. The third category would be company and market adoption agnostic functionality that any solution would need to have, typically around security, user management, etc. I believe that there's a planned webinar for early 2022, which will go into the details behind these features and the underlying technology, so please make sure to watch out for that webinar. You can also see that performance optimization is a key area that we'll be looking into. Of course, this is not a function per se. I hope this gives you an insight into what is coming. That was about the EPI product itself. We are very mindful that having an excellent technical product does not imply that this will be adopted or used. There is no point in having an excellent technical product if it is not adopted. Likewise, you can't have a bad technical product adopted. So over the next two slides, I'll go to the high-level tasks that needs to be done in order to maximize the possibility that this solution would be adopted. We've identified three key pillars or three key things that would need to be addressed. Sustainability and scalability. What happens when PharmaLedger project ends? PharmaLedger ends at the end of 2022. So in order to continue the work that has been done so far, we need to put something in place. The something is what we refer to as next gen, or PharmaLedger next generation. What this entity will ultimately call has not yet been decided. The second one is the adoption of the solution by the technical solution by the pharmaceutical companies. This includes all the associated processes and procedures that will be impacted. In order to have the solution adopted, then we need to have a critical mass of pharmaceutical companies who will have implemented the solution. This is important because ultimately the source of the data comes from the pharmaceutical companies' systems of record. And last but not least is the market adoption. As I said earlier, having the best technical solution without adoption is not a measure of success. While pharmaceutical company adoption and adoption by the health authorities and other stakeholders in the market is of importance, all of this will ultimately be in vain if patients do not adopt this, or if patients do not feel they can trust or find value in the solution. In the next slide, I will give an overview of the high-level tasks that need to be considered for each of the three pillars that I mentioned above. Let's start with next generation, or PharmaLedger next generation. So why is this actually needed at all, and why can't we just continue on as we currently are? Well, apart from the fact that PharmaLedger is a project which by definition means it has a defined end date, we also need to consider that in order to meet our regulatory obligations, a legal entity with a quality management system is required to implement compliance measures required by, for example, the EU Annex 11, the GXP computerized systems, or the US FDA 21 CFR Part 11 GXP electronic records, or the US FDA 21 CFR 820 quality management of GXP systems. Now, in order to meet the requirements of several privacy legislations, including but not limited to the EU GDPR, we must have a data privacy management system and assigned officers at a legal entity to maintain compliance. And finally, as defined in the PharmaLedger grant agreement, we have an obligation to define, establish and begin operations of a long-term sustainable entity to continue the work of the PharmaLedger research phase beyond 2022. So, as I said, PharmaLedger has an end date of December 22. So we need to stand up the legal entity, and this comprises things like governance and the stand-up of the QMS system. Once these are set up, we can then start to consider the operational phase. One of the first tasks will be the qualification of the EPI product, and then the development of this, and the development and onboarding of additional use cases. The next pillar to be addressed is the pharmaceutical company adoption. Here we have to consider not just the technical IT implementation, but we also need to consider the internal processes and procedures required in order to sustain the solution for the long term. While the implementation approach will differ from one pharmaceutical company to another, most will roughly approach it as follows. The implementation of a development system where technical testing, integration into the systems of record, followed by more testing will be performed. While not shown on the diagram, most companies would also have a test or quality system where they would perform the qualification activities before moving to the production environment. All of these steps are necessary in order to make sure that we have a fully qualified and validated system. We do all of these tasks to ensure that we can provide trustworthy data to the patients and the health authorities, and that we have a long-term sustainable solution. Once the production system is operationalized, we then need to qualify the EPI package that the PharmaLedger NextGen would deploy. Once deployed within the pharmaceutical company, we would need to maintain the validated state, which includes updates and bug fixes. Again, all of this is required in order to have a trustworthy and sustainable solution for the long term. The last pillar is the market adoption. And this starts with engaging with a number of markets to find out their interest or willingness to be part of a groundbreaking approach to building a trusted digital platform for patients to manage their healthcare needs. Now, you may be wondering why I'm saying that, considering we are just discussing EPI, right? Well, what we, the pharmaceutical companies and the public partners, including the participating patient organizations, are building is not just an EPI solution. EPI is the first step in this journey towards this trusted digital platform for patients to manage their healthcare needs. If we were only looking at EPI and not beyond EPI, then we would not be doing what we're doing as part of this consortium. I hope that gives some idea of the thought process behind all of this. Now, it is likely that some markets will process or proceed faster than others, and some markets may not even lead initially to a proof of concept or a pilot, and this can depend on many factors such as resources or other priorities. I think it is important to have a pilot in mind when engaging, as there are many facets to be considered, such as the scope, which products, for example, to use, the goal, what do we all want to achieve from this, and then we need to start preparing the products for the pilot itself. This takes time, and we have to consider potential artwork changes and potentially regulatory submissions. One of the obvious things that we would need to consider is how would the patient or person participating in the pilot actually know where to get the app, and whether the products or products they have are actually part of the pilot or not. Once the pilot is agreed, then we need to execute the pilot, evaluate the results, and determine the next steps. It is likely that the results will lead to additional updates and functionality being built into the solution in order to meet the needs of the various stakeholders. We would like to have more than one pilot running through 2023 in order to get more feedback from different stakeholders and from different parts of the world. I hope the last 13 minutes or so provided some useful insights into what is planned and why it is planned. In closing, and before handing back to Martin, I would like to summarise a number of things. This is not just a technical endeavour that we're undertaking as part of PharmaLedger. It may seem that way from the discussions around blockchain, enterprise wallet, integration into the systems of record, validation, app development, etc. However, these are just the necessary underlying aspects that need to be in place in order to build and operationalise the vision for a trusted digital healthcare platform where patients can manage their health needs. And now, having said that, I do have to give a big shout out to all the technical subject matter experts that have done excellent work so far and have overcome many challenges. As a result, we now have the blockchain nodes from 5 pharmaceutical companies connected. This is a major achievement for us. The excellent collaboration between all the parties and the relationships that have been built has been amazing. For me, this has been one of the major achievements of PharmaLedger. Without this, then we would not have achieved what we have. Now, the next goal will be to connect more companies, including some of the non-pharmaceutical companies. Now, as you heard earlier in the webinar, we also have some excellent sessions as part of the patient engagement workshops. These were really, really excellent sessions. We also need to be mindful of persons that do not have access to technology or that are not comfortable using technology and how moving towards a digital world will affect them. What we cannot have is a tiered, trusted digital healthcare platform. So these aspects are really important and need to be taken care of. And finally, we are at the start of this journey. And to be honest, we don't have all the answers, nor do we know all the questions. So the question to everyone is, would you be willing to come on this journey with us to help overcome the known and the unknown challenges in order to build a better and inclusive future? It is very important that this platform is inclusive of all stakeholders and that everyone has a voice. This is embedded within the PharmaLedger vision, and it is also key for adoption. Additionally, there are some very interesting use cases that are being worked on, such as clinical supply chain traceability, finished goods supply chain traceability. So please keep an eye out for these as well. We should also not forget the environmental aspects to this either. We often get asked if this requires us to set up server farms around the blockchain nodes and to perform mining, etc., because this is obviously very energy intensive. Well, the answer to this question is no, we will not be setting up server farms to do mining, etc. So thank you very much for your time. I will now hand over to Martin to get the results of the polls and open up a live Q&A. Please ask any questions you may have, and we're looking forward to your engagement.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay, we're going to have a look at the results that of polls that have been running through the presentations, and then we'll move on to the live Q&A, and we'll try and answer as many questions as possible in the time we have available. So the first question that was asked in the polls was in Ken Thursby's presentation, and he asked if who do you think is the most important ecosystem player for eLeaflet? And the results were that overwhelmingly 72% of people felt that patients were the most important players, with health authorities coming second, manufacturers in third place, and healthcare professionals last. So overwhelmingly a vote for patients there. So thank you for participating in that poll question. The second poll question was asked by TY when she was talking about the HCP Singapore exercise. TY asked, what do you think are the top 6 features that healthcare professionals desire in the app? And we can see that overwhelmingly the search capability within the product information was most important, followed by language selection and safety alerts from manufacturers tied in second place. Adverse drug reaction reporting to the regulator got 56%. Product information version date was just ahead of pop-up alerts for updates. And then it was personalized page for patients to keep track of medication coming in jointly with the pop-up alerts. And I think that was it for that one. Sorry, there was 2 more. There was medication reminder and price information, which came in at 22% and 17% respectively. Moving on to the third poll question, which was asked right at the end by Patrick. He was asking whether EPI Plus, the additional features that we'd gone through, would add more value to society. And as we expect, overwhelmingly, nearly everybody feels that yes, they would. So I think the team is right to pursue those additional features. So, okay, that concludes the poll questions that were asked during the presentations. So what we'd like to do now is open up the live Q&A. We'll try and get through as many questions as possible with the speakers who are all available. We're going to take the questions in the order in which they received the most votes. So if we take those in order, the question that received the most votes was, do you have support from the EMA to remove paper leaflets in Europe? So I think if I can ask Patrick to kick off and maybe answer that question.
Yeah. Hi, Martin. Hi, all. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay. What Pharma Ledger is building is a platform that will potentially allow the removal of paper at some point in the future. There are many aspects to the removal of paper, and in the 10 key principle issued by EMA, I mean, it was made very clear that for now, paper leaflets will remain. So that is the current situation. But we are hopeful that with a proven, trusted platform, that there may be inroads made into that. And Ken, do you want to add anything into this?
Hi, Patrick, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So the European Medicines Agency is doing a lot of work around e-leaflet. We are seeing that some of the nations in the EU27 are moving ahead of EMA in the sense that they've applied for a European Commission derogation to remove paper in the case of pilots, which has been for hospital products. And what this allows is for the ecosystem to try and learn, in small scale, to see what the impact of removing paper would be. And we've heard from the patients today that paper is valued, and we can't in any way restrict access to the information on the pack. That doesn't mean to say that you need to have the information in a box, right? And the EMA know this, but I'm sure they know it, but it has to be putting the patients first. And, we have to go through this journey and show what the positive and the negative effects are. I think that's reflected in the EMA's principles that they've published.
Super, thank you. Ken, can I ask you to take the next question there, which is, give an indication of when to actually stop putting leaflets into boxes, even if e-leaflets is fully functional, paper leaflets would be mandatory for patients not using mobile phones?
That's a great question. So we see in some markets around the world that e-leaflet is allowed. For example, in Australia, Singapore, e-leaflet is allowed, and very soon it's going to be allowed in Japan. So they've, at least for the doctor leaflet, by the middle of 2023. So there are markets which are moving faster than others. As to when it'll happen, that's a great question. We've seen, for those of you following current affairs, with the COP26 over the last few weeks, there's a real environmental pressure on the world to tackle climate change. And, the paper and print industries are one of the most energy intensive industries on the planet. So, okay, the leaflet is a very, very small part of the packaging, but wouldn't that be a really good step in the right direction to reduce the energy that's used to make a pack of medicine? And maybe that will catalyze this, who knows?
Super, thanks, Ken. The next question, I guess, which is the widest one around this. So Patrick, I don't know if you can pick this up because it's what you talked about, which is when do you expect this coming to market?
Hi, Martin. Yeah, thanks. Am I getting a lot of feedback here? No? Okay. Well, we're planning to have a production ready at the end of next year. We have, like we said during the presentation, there's many aspects to go through in order to get it to the market. But so our plan is we would have it piloting the end of next year, the start of 2023.
Okay, super. And the next question, Patrick, I don't know if you can help with this one. It's quite a technical one. What XML standards as leaflet details like HL7 SPL are supported by PharmaLedger?
Yeah, right now we are using the SPL from the US because that was kind of that was a standard that was out there. We're also very much aware of what EMA are doing, so we're keeping an eye on that at the moment as well, because that would be very interesting. And I saw there was other questions about the conversion or something over to XML, for example, and these are all very related type questions, because in today's world, as Ken said, we produce in a Word document. And often even in a PDF, we convert to PDF and share that with the health authorities in some instances. So we do have this situation in the world today where we have all these Word files, and how would we convert them over to an XML structure, whatever that would be, in order to show it. Whether there would be one standard that would be used across the globe. That will be obviously a blue sky vision. It will be the ideal scenario. We don't necessarily believe that that will be the case, but we are certainly keeping an eye on all of those things. I hope that answers the question a bit.
Hopefully. I mean, we have a technical webinar happening next year, so hopefully we can expand on those things then.
Thank you.
Patrick and Ken, I don't know if you can answer this one. Some companies have their own EPI project already implemented. What's the plan to have all pharma companies on board on the same project like PharmaLedger?
Ken, do you want to take this one? Then I can chime in. Okay, maybe I can take that. I guess Ken is having some technical issues. The way we're kind of looking at it is we need an industry approach to this because we don't want the patients to have an app per company, right? So while it is useful that companies are starting on this, we do need to look at what is the best for the ecosystem and how can we manage to do this. We do have we are concerned that there could be many different solutions across the globe. That is not good for any of us, right? So we are very mindful of that aspect. So, but we would encourage people to just have a look at the PharmaLedger solution, get involved with us, see what it is involved in doing this. And like we said earlier, we don't have all the answers to all the questions, nor do we know all the questions, right? We are at the start of this journey. And we do need to have more engagement from many across the stakeholder groups.
Yeah. I mean, Ken, that kind of leads on to the next question, which is the biggest challenge. What do you see as the biggest challenge for mass adoption of EPI? You got any thoughts or perspectives on that?
Maybe take that one. So for mass adoption, we think that you have to be thinking about the user, right? And it has to be easy for the user to get the information, and it has to be valuable. So the idea of having an app where you can get any manufacturer's information would be appealing if you're a patient. You don't want to be switching all the apps, like Patrick was just saying before. Being able to bridge different markets with different languages. You know, when we look at shared packs that we have in Europe today, for example, you might have a trilingual pack. In the future, it'll be possible to have a pack where you can get the language by scanning, no matter where you are. If we can offer incremental value over and above the basic PI, I mean, that's what you're competing against paper, right? Are you giving a better service to patients and healthcare practitioners by having it digitally? We think that there's an incremental improvement by moving to digital. You still need to solve the access for people who aren't digitally able, but it's all the other added benefits. I'm here in the UK today. In the UK, there's an NHS app. It's very widely adopted because of COVID, because you can get your COVID passport there. You can also see what meds you've been prescribed, and in the future, it would be great if there's a button on there that you could press to get the EPI, and maybe you could report adverse events through that. It doesn't need to be the PharmaLedger app. It's about managing health conditions, the interoperability between different healthcare systems, and helping move the health system forward into a digital world where there's more connectivity and more value.
Super, thank you. Our next question, which has just jumped up, is are all 12 pharma companies of PharmaLedger committed to this solution? Patrick or Ken, is this for you?
I can have a go, and then Patrick, you could maybe chime in. We've got 12 companies. Imagine a family, right, with 12 different members. Each of the family members are their own person, their own entity with their own interests, their own agenda, and everyone learns at a different rate. And I think with PharmaLedger, we've come together as a group of entities that are interested in digitizing healthcare, sharing of data and information. And EPI is a use case that we've all agreed to do. But it's fair to say that every company is not the same. You know, we're all on different parts of the journey. So some are more, let's say, advanced in thinking or mature. They've been involved in a higher degree of experimentation in certain POC markets than others. Out of that, Patrick.
No, Ken. I think that's a fair summary of it. I mean, and like it does take time to digest this, to understand it all, and to see where this will go, because this isn't just about EPI, right? It's much more. It's like EPI plus all the other digital services that can be added on top. That's where the value lies here, you know.
Sure, thank you, guys. The next question is about your perspective on company-owned EPI apps versus independent or healthcare authority solutions. Does it make sense to provide a company app ad interim?
I will take that. I don't know. I think that maybe should be answered by somebody from maybe the patient side of stuff. I mean, I don't know if my mother would want to be putting many apps on her phone and trying to figure out which one to scan, right? But it's a path towards going digital. So we can always look on the bright side of things, right? But I would have to defer to maybe somebody from the patients group to decide if that was a good idea or not.
Would anyone from the European Patient Forum or one of the patients like to add anything?
I can probably take that one. I think having too many apps is going to be too difficult for patients to manage. If you have 12 apps on your phone and you're in a pharmacy trying to do this, or even at home, it just takes up a huge amount of time that really you didn't have to do before. So it's adding an extra burden on the patient. So I don't think that will be accepted. To have just one app, that is the preferable situation. And until that happens, I don't think patients are going to be using a multitude of apps.
Okay, super. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for that. Okay, we'll move on to the next question, which is that around 70% of countries are not yet on eCTD yet and require paper submissions. How will you convince those countries and regulators on the benefits of EPI? So probably back to Ken and Patrick, I think.
We learned an interesting fact through our work with regulatory colleagues. For a new submission, it takes 9.5 months to create an e-leaflet, which is longer than it takes to make a human being. Now, I know there's lots of scientific review. I'm not being flippant. It just what it illustrates. It takes a long time to create this document to get it right, and it's also recognized. You know, there's lots of handoffs between the regulator and the pharmaceutical company in doing these important checks to make sure the document's right. Wouldn't it be good if we could create this document in a format which could be shared, reviewed, approved, get all the comments, and do it faster? Would that create less administrative burden for the health authorities? We think so. If you look at Europe, just Europe, we have 2,500 MA holders, marketing authorization holders. And each of those has multiple products. And each product sees updates happening through its life cycle where the leaflet would need to be updated. That's a lot of work. And every entity in the healthcare ecosystem wants to reduce its cost to be more efficient. So I think that's one thing that's at stake. And then probably the second and the most important to me is being able to get new innovative products for unmet needs to markets quicker, to help patients. Anything that can improve speed, you know, for example, if you have a condition which is life or death, and there's a product coming to the market, anything to get that to the market faster would be important to you. So I think those are just a couple of examples of how the sharing of data and information could help efficiency and speed.
Okay, thank you. The next question has got a technical one. How do you convert content captured in documents into XML?
I can take that one. At the moment, we're looking at that specific one, and particularly with the work that EMA are doing. This sounds like a very small thing, but in order for us to go digital and to avoid, like I think Paul had mentioned, like PDF on glass, right? You do need to have a structured content. And then we're also getting the feedback from the patients in terms of they want to have quick access to certain sections of the document. So all of that input has to be taken into account and considered in the structure of the document so we can actually use it. Have we solved the problem yet? No, we haven't solved the problem yet. And like I referred to earlier, we do have the situation where we do have a lot of these Word documents, as Ken mentioned as well. And we will have an interim situation where we will probably need to go and convert those into a structured XML until we start creating them in that format to begin with.
Okay, super. Do you have support from the EMA to remove paper leaflets in Europe? So I think if I can ask Patrick to kick off and maybe answer that question.
Yeah. Hi, Martin. Hi, all. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay. What PharmaLedger is building is a platform that will potentially allow the removal of paper at some point in the future. There are many aspects to the removal of paper, and in the 10 key principle issued by EMA, I mean, it was made very clear that for now, paper leaflets will remain. So that is the current situation. But we are hopeful that with a proven, trusted platform, that there may be inroads made into that. Ken, do you want to add anything into this?
Hi, Patrick, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, brilliant. So the European Medicines Agency is doing a lot of work around e-leaflet. We are seeing that some of the nations in the EU27 are moving ahead of EMA in the sense that they've applied for a European Commission derogation to remove paper in the case of pilots, which has been for hospital products. And what this allows is for the ecosystem to try and learn, you know, in small scale, to see what the impact of removing paper would be. And we've heard from the patients today that paper is valued, and we can't in any way restrict access to the information on the pack. That doesn't mean to say that you need to have the information in a box, right? And the EMA know this, but I'm sure they know it, but it has to be putting the patients first. And, you know, we have to go through this journey and show what the positive and the negative effects are. I think that's reflected in the EMA's principles that they've published.
Super, thank you. Ken, can I ask you to take the next question there, which is, you know, give an indication of when to actually stop putting leaflets into boxes, even if e-leaflets is fully functional, paper leaflets would be mandatory for patients not using mobile phones?
That's a great question. So we see in some markets around the world that e-leaflet is allowed. For example, in Australia, Singapore, e-leaflet is allowed, and very soon it's going to be allowed in Japan. So they've, at least for the doctor leaflet, by the middle of 2023. So there are markets which are moving faster than others. As to when it'll happen, that's a great question. We've seen, for those of you following current affairs, with the COP26 over the last few weeks, there's a real environmental pressure on the world to tackle climate change. And, the paper and print industries are one of the most energy intensive industries on the planet. So, okay, the leaflet is a very, very small part of the packaging, but wouldn't that be a really good step in the right direction to reduce the energy that's used to make a pack of medicine? And maybe that will catalyze this, who knows?
Super, thanks, Ken. The next question, I guess, which is the widest one around this. So Patrick, I don't know if you can pick this up because it's what you talked about, which is when do you expect this coming to market?
Hi, Martin. Yeah, thanks. Am I getting a lot of feedback here? No? Okay. Well, we're planning to have a production ready at the end of next year. We have, like we said during the presentation, there's many aspects to go through in order to get it to the market. But so our plan is we would have it piloting the end of next year, the start of the 2023.
Okay, super. And the next question, Patrick, I don't know if you can help with this one. It's quite a technical one. What XML standards as leaflet details like HL7 SPL are supported by PharmaLedger?
Yeah, right now we are using SPL from the US because that was kind of that was a standard that was out there. We're also very much aware of what EMA are doing, so we're keeping an eye on that at the moment as well, because that would be very interesting. And I saw there was other questions about the conversion or something over to XML, for example, and these are all very related type questions because in today's world, as Ken said, we produce in a Word document. And often even in a PDF, we convert to PDF and share that with the health authorities in some instances. So we do have this situation in the world today where we have all these Word files, and how would we convert them over to an XML structure, whatever that would be, in order to show it. Whether there would be one standard that would be used across the globe, that would be obviously a blue sky vision. It would be the ideal scenario. We don't necessarily believe that that will be the case, but we are certainly keeping an eye on all of those things. I hope that answers the question a bit.
Hopefully. I mean, we have a technical webinar happening next year, so hopefully we can expand on those things then. Patrick and Ken, I don't know if you can answer this one. Some companies have their own EPI project already implemented. What's the plan to have all pharma companies on board on the same project like PharmaLedger?
Ken, do you want to take this one? Then I can chime in. Okay, maybe I can take that. I guess Ken is having some technical issues. The way we are kind of looking at it is we need an industry approach to this because we don't want the patients to have an app per company, right? So while it is useful that companies are starting on this, we do need to look at what is the best for the ecosystem and how can we manage to do this. We do have we are concerned that there could be many different solutions across the globe. That is not good for any of us, right? So we are very mindful of that aspect. So, but we would encourage people to just have a look at the PharmaLedger solution, get involved with us, see what it is involved in doing this. And like we said earlier, we don't have all the answers to all the questions, nor do we know all the questions, right? We are at the start of this journey, and we do need to have more engagement from many across the stakeholder groups.
Yeah. I mean, Ken, that kind of leads on to the next question, which is the biggest challenge. What do you see as the biggest challenge for mass adoption of EPI? You got any thoughts or perspectives on that?
Maybe take that one. So for mass adoption, we think that you have to be thinking about the user, right? And it has to be easy for the user to get the information, and it has to be valuable. So the idea of having an app where you can get any manufacturer's information would be appealing if you're a patient. You don't want to be switching all the apps, like Patrick was just saying before. Being able to bridge different markets with different languages. You know, when we look at shared packs that we have in Europe today, for example, you might have a trilingual pack. In the future, it'll be possible to have a pack where you can get the language by scanning, no matter where you are. If we can offer incremental value over and above the basic PI, I mean, that's what you're competing against paper, right? Are you giving a better service to patients and healthcare practitioners by having it digitally? We think that there's an incremental improvement by moving to digital. You still need to solve the access for people who aren't digitally able, but it's all the other added benefits. I'm here in the UK today. In the UK, there's an NHS app. It's very widely adopted because of COVID, because you can get your COVID passport there. You can also see what meds you've been prescribed, and in the future, it would be great if there was a button on there that you could press to get the EPI, and maybe you could report adverse events through that. It doesn't need to be the PharmaLedger app. It's about health, managing health conditions, the interoperability between different healthcare systems, and helping move the health system forward into a digital world where there's more connectivity and more value.
Super, thank you. Our next question, which has just jumped up, is are all 12 pharma companies of PharmaLedger committed to this solution? Patrick or Ken, is this for you?
I can have a go, and then Patrick, you could maybe chime in. We've got 12 companies. Imagine a family, right, with 12 different members. Each of the family members are their own person, their own entity with their own interests, their own agenda, and everyone learns at a different rate. And I think with PharmaLedger, we've come together as a group of entities that are interested in digitizing healthcare, sharing of data and information. And EPI is a use case that we've all agreed to do. But it's fair to say that every company is not the same. You know, we're all on different parts of the journey. So some are more, let's say, advanced in thinking or mature. They've been involved in a higher degree of experimentation in certain POC markets than others. Out of that, Patrick.
No, Ken, I think that's a fair summary of it. I mean, and like it does take time to digest this, to understand it all, and to see where this will go, because this isn't just about EPI, right? It's much more. It's like EPI plus all the other digital services that can be added on top. That's where the value lies here, you know.
Sure, thank you, guys. The next question is about your perspective on company-owned EPI apps versus independent or healthcare authority solutions. Does it make sense to provide a company app ad interim?
I will take that. I don't know. I think that maybe should be answered by somebody from maybe the patient side of stuff. I mean, I don't know if my mother would want to be putting many apps on her phone and trying to figure out which one to scan, right? But it's a path towards going digital. So we can always look on the bright side of things, right? But I would have to defer to maybe somebody from the patients group to decide if that was a good idea or not.
Would anyone from the European Patient Forum or one of the patients like to add anything?
I can probably take that one. I think having too many apps is going to be too difficult for patients to manage. If you have 12 apps on your phone and you're in a pharmacy trying to do this, or even at home, it just takes up a huge amount of time that really you didn't have to do before. So it's adding an extra burden on the patient. So I don't think that will be accepted. To have just one app, that is the preferable situation. And until that happens, I don't think patients are going to be using a multitude of apps.
Okay, super. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for that. Okay, we'll move on to the next question, which is that around 70% of countries are not yet on eCTD yet and require paper submissions. How will you convince those countries and regulators on the benefits of EPI? So probably back to Ken and Patrick, I think.
We learned an interesting fact through our work with regulatory colleagues. For a new submission, it takes 9.5 months to create an e-leaflet, which is longer than it takes to make a human being. Now, I know there's lots of scientific review. I'm not being flippant. It just what that illustrates. It takes a long time to create this document to get it right, and it's also recognised. There's lots of handoffs between the regulator and the pharmaceutical company in doing these important checks to make sure the document's right. Wouldn't it be good if we could create this document in a format which could be shared, reviewed, approved, get all the comments, and do it faster? Would that create less administrative burden for the health authorities? We think so. If you look at Europe, just Europe, we have 2,500 MA holders, marketing authorization holders, and each of those has multiple products. And each product sees updates happening through its life cycle where the leaflet would need to be updated. That's a lot of work. And every entity in the healthcare ecosystem wants to reduce its cost to be more efficient. So I think that's one thing that's at stake. And then probably the second and the most important to me is being able to get new innovative products for unmet needs to markets quicker, to help patients. Anything that can improve speed, for example, if you have a condition which is life or death and there's a product coming to the market, anything to get that to the market faster would be important to you. So I think those are just a couple of examples of how the sharing of data and information could help efficiency and speed.
Okay, thank you. The next question has got a technical one. How do you convert content captured in documents into XML?
I can take that one. At the moment, we're looking at that specific one, and particularly with the work that EMA are doing. This sounds like a very small thing, but in order for us to go digital and to avoid, like I think Paul had mentioned, like PDF on glass, right? You do need to have a structured content. And then we're also getting the feedback from the patients in terms of they want to have quick access to certain sections of the document. So all of that input has to be taken into account and considered in the structure of the document so we can actually use it. Have we solved the problem yet? No, we haven't solved the problem yet. And like I referred to earlier, we do have the situation where we do have a lot of these Word documents, as Ken mentioned as well. And we will have an interim situation where we will probably need to go and convert those into a structured XML until we start creating them in that format to begin with.
Okay, super. Thank you, Patrick. I'm very conscious of the time and the fact that we've not been able to answer all of the questions. So just to say that apologies for us not being able to get through them all in the time we have available. You can reach out to PharmaLedger if you have specific questions. You can visit our website for more information. You can subscribe to PharmaLedger as well, where you'll be able to get advance notice of the webinars that are coming up, to get advanced news through our newsletters as well. So I'd encourage you to do that if you have questions that you would like to follow up on. But apologies, we've not been able to get through more of them in the time available. So I'd just like to thank everyone who's been involved in the webinar today, the speakers and the production team, and to you, the audience, for your attendance and your participation. The recording of this webinar will be available on YouTube shortly. We will be running this webinar again in the new year as well. So feel free to join us for that and for future ones. Please take a moment as well to take part in the Slido end of webinar survey that we've got. Your feedback is very valuable, and we do try and incorporate it in the improvements to our webinars going forward. But for now, until the next webinar, thank you very much and goodbye.